Hello. Nice to you, Charles. I've got a quick interruption straight
Yeah,
away.
please interrupt away because I'd hate us to start on anything other than an interruption, really. It seems the politest yet rudest way to begin something.
Well, I'm a firm believer that originality is what you do with someone else's idea.
It's what you claim as your
Well,
own,
I
isn't
came
it?
across one bit of musical theft by accident when I heard John Grant on BBC6 Music. Yeah. Well, it's what you do with someone else's idea. Like you add a bit of your
Yeah.
ideas, or you change how the person did their idea, add a bit extra, and you got the end result. But Guy Garvey on BBC6 Music this afternoon, and he
Was
played.
it was it was it Johnny Grant has been on for him instead, hasn't he? Recently.
Yeah. He's good. He's
Mm.
good. But he played Shannon's sort of like dance pop hit. Uh, Let the Music Play for which came out in September 1983, and I
Yes.
hadn't really heard the track before, but when you listen to it, the verse is fairly identical to "Into the Groove" by Madonna, which which came out 2 years later. Now, even if Madonna started writing the song a year before it was released, which is
Mm.
possible in the world of pop music, she's definitely written her song after Shannon's was released, and the verse is the same chord sequence, the same tempo, and the same sort of slightly galloping feel to it that Into the Groove's got, and the chorus isn't the same, but the verse, which is a really important part of it, the groove, is pretty damn similar.
Well, obviously she got into his groove. That's fine. She
Well, yeah, that's what they do in
did
rock and
exactly
roll.
that. She liked someone's groove, encouraged you to get
Mm,
into it. She could have
yeah,
name
yeah.
checked him, of course, but didn't. Um,
It just means that the song itself wasn't like a virgin at all. It was definitely already semi-used.
that was never going to work as a single, like a semi-used. No.
No, that's terrible. Oh,
Yeah. So, Graham, good evening. You are Graham Chalmers. How do we introduce you?
uh, organised lots of gigs, arts events, Harrier Tizer, Holiday in the Mail, Brevetoften Argus. That's the it, really, I think.
That's fine. I think that's a good introduction. I'm still Charles Hutchinson, and I still contribute to the York Press on a freelance basis, and likewise York Radio every fortnight on a Wednesday, previewing what's coming up in the arts world in York. And in particular, I do the Charles Hutch Press website, which covers Yorkshire, predominantly York, where I'm based, obviously. And this week, for example, no fewer than 6 shows that I've seen, only one of which wasn't in York, and that was in Scarborough.
Wow.
John Gobler's "Do I Love You,"
you
which I'd seen
you are still
before.
You're still Yorkshire's most committed reviewer. I don't know anybody in the last 30 years in Yorkshire, any art critics who go to as many shows as you do
I
and
think
have done.
I think Liz Coggins pretty well rivals me, but then Liz is always, if she's not busy reviewing, she's off doing a travel feature, which actually seems to be quite a good reward for reviewing, to be able to go off to some indulgent, lovely place and stay in a luxurious hotel. But I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm not going to do
What
that.
would
I'm
you
just going
rather
to do
have?
more
A long
reviews.
weekend? What would you rather have? A long weekend in Tuscany or a panto visit?
I think I'd rather have the panto visit. I mean, I know that sounds ridiculous,
Okay,
but and
it
actually in a week
does.
like this, which I saw 3 musicals, and this morning I was chatting with Paul Harford, the Markington, the Caton Parish vicar, and he hates musicals. He can't stand them. So on February the
I don't blame
14th,
him.
whereas we were discussing Valentine's Day, and this is how this came about. So on Valentine's Day, his wife Sarah and the 2 children are heading off to see Hamilton. And he said he's fine
Mm.
to be at home because he can't stand Hamilton. And so, obviously musicals remain divisive. And I suppose if I'm put on the spot, if my ultimate preference for theatre shows, would it be musicals, or would it be a play without music, or would it
Mm.
be a one that
A drama.
combines both? And the answer would be drama, and which is a kind of tenuous
Mm.
link into what we're looking at as our first topic today. And that's nothing against a really good musical, which whereas Paul, as I say, the vicar here at Caton Parish doesn't like musicals. I do like some musicals very much, but I think I'm drawn ultimately, as I say, to wonderful dramas. And a play that came back to York on tour, The Woman in Black. And the story behind that, of course, Susan Hill novel. She was from Scarborough, Susan. And
Mm.
this is a piece back as long ago now as 1987. Scarborough Stephen Joseph Theatre were looking for a Christmas show. And it's actually partly set at that time, this piece. And so the great tradition of Christmas ghost stories. So Stephen Malatratt adapted it for the Stephen Joseph. And I think initially the piece was, as I understand it, set in a pub, but subsequently the version that one sees now on tour and goes everywhere across the world as well, is set in what is a disused theatre with curtains that have seen better times and probably couldn't draw together anymore. And if I'm looking at what I love about theatre, and I've got this week I've been to see Zone of Interest, which you and I reflected on last week. And if anyone gets the chance to see, this is an extraordinary piece of filmmaking. So I love powerful
Very
filmmaking
chilling,
as well.
though.
Say again, Graham. Say again.
It's very chilling film. It's a very
Absolutely.
chilling film sort of interest. It's a bit like The Innocents, which is sort of adapted from Turn of the Screw, in the sense that nothing really happens, but it's horrible the whole time anyway.
Absolutely. And I learned, which I don't think when we visited Auschwitz, I don't think I'd appreciated what the zone of interest actually is. And it is the houses on the perimeter of the camp. That is what is known in Nazi times. That's what they called it. Neutral territory, as they called it. Zone of interest. Yeah. So,
nice.
So I'm just kind of going off on a detour here, but I'm not making an expression of preference of film over theatre. But when one goes to a theatre show, and I've seen The Woman in Black many times, but it still grips in the same way that it always has. And I think it's how it celebrates theatre and our love of horror, if you like, and our love of ghost stories as English theatre goers, and also our love of theatre buildings. And all this comes into play in this piece. It's a really powerful piece of storytelling, which is at the heart of our lives from so early on, where we have bednight stories read to us. And I think we are naturally storytellers. That is, even if one isn't into going to theatre, people will read books and they'll say, "Oh, I'm for a book to theatre or whatever." But we are storytellers, and storytelling.
If I can butt in very briefly, Charles. My feeling about theatre is that most people don't go to theatre to see dramas. It's just a statistic. But I always think that if you actually took people who were sitting on their couch in the living room watching television, and without telling them, seamlessly moved them while they're still on the couch and plonked them inside the theatre, still on the couch, and then the play started, I think most people would enjoy it. It's just it's so hard to get people to leave their houses and walk in through a theatre door. And I don't understand why it's hard, but there's something about the theatre that makes a lot of people, except when it's a comedian on stage or panto, slightly sort of like worried about going in to see a play. And I don't understand why. That
I think is where The Woman in Black is really good. So I was sitting next door to a teacher at the latest performance that I went to, which was a matinee performance of it. And we're talking children who were doing theatre studies, aged 13 to 16. And apparently, along with Blood Brothers, it's the one that the school teachers dread most because they keep having to see it over and over again, either that or The Woman in Black. But actually, as an introduction to theatre beyond the obvious pantomime introduction to theatre or Peppa Pig or whatever, going to see a show like The Woman in Black, which is so outstanding in every way as a piece of theatre, is as good a way of getting people off the sofa at home and seeing why actually a night at the theatre as a shared and collective experience is very precious. And you can have that argument about, you get some sense of a buzz of a very big audience at a concert. Likewise, you could say that's the case in the cinema. But there's something about a theatre gathering where, in this case, you're being scared by what you're watching. And it's very skillfully done in assessing how people are going to react when they're going to be really most scared. But actually the joy of, in my case, I'd seen it so many times, so I kind of to some extent, I'm always in a nervous state as to when it's going to happen, and I think I know when it is, and then it doesn't happen at that moment, and I rather rather enjoy that. But for children, it was interesting watching their reactions, and they completely starts off as usual with children chewing on the sweets, and then they're then completely drawn into this piece, and it's because it's rooted in storytelling, and it's because it's rooted in imagination, and it's because it's only two actors plus the third figure, who obviously is the woman in black figure, and it's when is she going to turn up, how is she going to turn up, when are we going to see her? So all these things play on your mind, which again I love about a live theatre, that it's being, this magic is being created in front of you, and it's not massive sleight of hand involved, it's not hugely subtle, it's actually playing on your fears and those around you, rather
there's
than
also there's no
in,
editing when you see a film or watch editing. A TV program. You know they've got the chance to pause and start again, or refilm it, or move the cameras. When you're at the theatre watching a play, it's real people in front of you, and every single second is completely, even though it's fiction, it's real, and if it works, it's working in the moment.
And in the case of a piece like this, The Woman in Black, to all intents and purposes, it is a two-hander. And if we enjoy watching Morecambe and Wise, Ronnie Corbett and Ronnie Barker as two-handers,
or perhaps Holly Willoughby and Philip Schofield.
That's a very interesting, if a little unusual comparison. Wasn't seeing that one coming at all.
The great double acts.
But you know what I mean with double acts. I mean, yes, we can have, well, you can have the Ant and Dec, who've become the modern day double act that is so appreciated. I guess we could look at Claudia and Tessa not being able to dance one step when they invite us to keep on dancing, or whatever it is, and they barely take one step forward. But double acts are always there. So part of, again, I think the appeal of The Woman in Black is it is two people working in tandem to tell a story and creating theatricality out of nothing in front of you. So that's another element of it that works so wonderfully well. We're drawn to double acts. I mean, we have a history. You could say in the same with Penn and I'm no good at the names of the American magicians. Penn and Teller. That's the name. Yeah. So even within the Basil Brush and Roy, you name it. So we have a love of double acts. Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson singing together. Yeah. Well, there you go. Double acts.
Indeed. So what's your point about this play? Because it's obviously a classic. It's been going since '87. So it's obviously very good.
So my point is that I'm never bored by a play like this, which must mean that it to me, of course, I'm not saying it's the most complete play by comparison with Hamlet or King Lear or Chekhov or whatever. Yeah. But if people don't go to the theatre and should at least try it out, if I were to pick out one piece of theatre that I would recommend them to do so, it would be this piece, The Woman in Black.
Wow.
And that's how strongly I'm in favour. And as I say, I have reviewed it many, many times over the years, and I still enjoy it as much as ever. And I think part of that joy is actually seeing people, as it was, this line of children alongside me, the 13 to 16-year-olds, enjoying it as much as I was. And I love to see other people enjoying theatre. Obviously, it's my great passion, is theatre, and I wish more people to go to it. And so when I see the impact that it has, there's almost a punch in the air feeling for me about that.
Yeah, I don't love theatre quite as much as you. I'm a bit more sniffy about it. But yeah, you're right. There's something about the theatre that you can't get anywhere else. And when I've seen really good theatre, which happens every now and again, not that often, I'm then impressed. And I love it. But one thing I was thinking, Charles, can you imagine, like, if you'd written a very good article in 1987 and it was still being reprinted now and talked about and advertised, you'd be unbelievably over the moon. So it's a bit strange that someone can write something so long ago, and it's just as alive now and successful now as it was when they wrote it. And us poor journalists and critics, even our good stuff.
That's exactly the distinction. I mean, I think I value what I do. I love reading how you write and what you write and your opinions, and we have our roles to play. And interestingly, in this musical Curtains that I went to this week, which is a Candor and Ebb musical with script by Rupert Holmes, who had the hit with Escape, the Pina Colada song.
Oh yeah.
The spoiler, it's actually finished its run in York, so I can safely say that the person who actually in this whodunit is committing the crimes is a sad and twisted theatre critic.
Oh wow.
So and the theatre critics get it in the butt, or get it in the, I don't know what, anyway they get they're not popular in this particular musical. They are the butt of jokes and the butt and the victimhood in it. But it reminded me that yes, that's one of the realities for the role of the critic. I don't, I mean, you could argue that actually there's the rare genius of some critics having more impact than others, and we can think of the great film critics that we've enjoyed through the years and mentioned, or obviously in terms of theatre, the significance of a theatre critic like Kenneth Tynan and the impact
that's
that
a long
he
time
had.
ago, Kenneth Tynan, though. Eh? My God, that's the 60s, man.
But he's sort of seen as the doyen of theatre critics. The actual craft of theatre writing, of theatre critics writing, I don't think has changed at all. What makes a good theatre critic, I don't think has changed at all. It is a skill in itself, but I really don't want to big it up in any way by comparison.
No,
obviously, with creativity, it's a different skill. It has its role. I love doing what I do, but the reality is, today it was challenged to me, Charles, you must be able to write something creative, and the answer is no. I don't have it. I don't have it in me. So instantly, I admire.
No, a good critic is creative in his or her criticism.
But it's a much more limited field.
The act of criticism is not an art. It's not quite an art form.
No, it's not. I mean, you will have. I've just bought Ted Kessler's book, which is all about. So he was a journalist, a very eminent music critic in his time. He ran magazines, and the magazine that he most famously run was Q, which of course closed down. And it's all about this. I have just making steady progress through it, and it's all about that form of music criticism that's died out with the loss of a magazine like Q, and how a not unfamiliar story in the world of journalism, where he just found that their resources were being cut back and cut back and cut back and cut back and cut back. And we've talked about this many a time, that is what has happened in the journalism. So it's interesting to get his perspective on that. But
it's also their lack of confidence in their own ability to be honest or be imaginative in their reviewing, because as the pressures on journalism grew to fit the model of success set by the companies and the industry itself, they started to capitulate. So whereas in the 70s and 80s, most music critics would take a punt on any outlandish style of writing or idea about music.
Yes.
And we got some amazing articles. I remember Paul Morley's articles for the NME. Some of them used to be astounding. Well, all that stopped at some point in the 90s because the journalists weren't just under pressure financially. They were under pressure to like toe the line and to fit in with the industry, and they pretty much capitulated.
I mean, you get collected writings by journalists that are highly rated. We can think of Marina Hyde's writings in the recent times, The Guardian being gathered in a book, and there's a new version of that book now out in paperback. If anyone didn't buy it in the hardback version, that I would thoroughly recommend. So, of course, journalism has its impact and its collected impact with writing of that standard and significant in the political field. And the same would apply if one's looking at the writing of a John Ronson, the Paul Morley gathering his writings, or stepping beyond just doing the short form of critiquing and actually taking a theme for a book, and which is perhaps the higher that's the higher form, isn't it, Graham?
There's a few music journalists over the years have got their own compilation books of articles from music magazines and newspapers. There's Lester Bangs, the famous American one. But in Britain, you've had Charles Shar Murray. His collection of work's really good, and John Savage's writing gets collected and is brilliant. So there's a few rare examples where the music critic has gone beyond just a temporary appreciation or lack of it of a current record or concert into something that's still worth reading 20, 30 years later. but there's not many.
Or Mark Allen, or Mark Allen, and his writing. Or who was
Hmm.
the writer that you referred to last year, the way you've been reading his who worked with Mark Allen? Why am I not remembering his name? The
David
writer that you
Hepworth.
with Hepworth.
David
So,
Hepworth is
mm,
such a brilliant writer, but he's so cynical about music, and
mm.
he and he's so when I read his stuff, he's like a brilliant writer for wisdom. He could be writing about cricket rather than music.
Is that sort of making it too analytical and dry then?
Well, no, he's always detached. He's always at a distance. He doesn't feel, he doesn't get the idea behind the music. He hasn't got passion for the music.
Mm.
He's a very well he comes across as a very well educated man, making a very good analysis of something that he's not deeply invested in. And that sounds ridiculous because him and Mark are still doing live
Yes.
events in London as
Yes.
we speak
That's
about
right.
rock music. So
That's
they
right.
clearly are invested in it.
Yeah.
They've been doing it for decades. It's just, I just think that's what comes across in the
Yes.
tone. But he is a great writer. I'm only jealous because he's really good.
So, Graham, film that's coming up, opening on Valentine's Day with the unsubtly connected title of One Love, which is the Bob Marley biopic, opening, as I say, on that day, on Valentine's Day. And I've read the one advance review on it, which has predictably said that it's something of a hagiography. It doesn't really go deep enough. It's been
What a
thoroughly
surprise.
thoroughly approved by the family in every way, so it doesn't give certain sides of Bob in very much detail at all. And but you're looking at an interesting point in this. This has come about through the star of the new Bob Marley biopic, One Love, or one of the stars, on how people from a working class background have been marginalised in her profession. So who is the actress concerned, Graham? What role does
Well,
she play, and how have
well
you
that's
come across her
yeah.
to highlight this situation?
Well, Lashana Lynch was actually in that last Bond film, No Time to Die. She
Yes.
played the female uh, secret agent who took over from Bond himself, and she was
Yes.
called 007 for probably about a third of the film.
Oh, she was. Yes.
Before,
Yes.
yeah, before she finally gave some respect to
Yeah.
the real 007, and
Mm.
they both made up, and it was fine. And she played quite a feisty character in No Time to Die. And this time around, she's
Mm.
playing Bob Marley's wife, Rita,
Yes.
in One Love. And
Mm.
she's clearly not from a middle class or
No.
middle class background. So in the interview that I read in The Guardian, she was talking about her
Mm.
own working class background and how she'd come across so few other working class people in
Mm.
acting and in films. And it didn't really surprise me. And it was probably always that way at all points to a certain degree because the arts are always dominated by the middle classes, always have been. They've got the
Mm.
education and the time and the inclination. And
And the access to the money usually to be able to
yeah, and the money, yeah.
fund projects.
But there are some facts that say things have actually gone the wrong direction in
Yeah.
Britain itself. So this is a statistic. I don't usually do statistics, but sometimes
No.
they're useful. The share of working class actors, musicians, and writers in Britain has halved since 1970. There's 50% less of the whole damn bunch of them from a working class background. And that was according to a social mobility research study in 2022. So that is a big change from 1970.
Mm.
On top of that, a 2021 study found that actors from middle class backgrounds quite often pretend to be working class, which is because it's still a bit cool to pretend that you come from a working class background, but it's just not successful if you do come from a working class background. So that's like rubbing salt into the wounds.
When described as she described as being marginalized, is this then she doesn't get roles because of this marginalizing, or is it simply that actually to achieve anything at all has just been more difficult for her than it should have been in an ideal world?
She does not go into details, which is either the
Mm.
fault of the interviewer or more likely that if she went into details, she might cause some offence within the industry. So I didn't get any sense of
Yeah.
the exact nature of this situation. But you can imagine that it's like if you join a club of people who are all really intelligent and you're a bit dense, you're not going to feel particularly at home. And it's going to be like hard work. So the more you've got the situation where the middle classes dominate the arts, the more I imagine that working class people find it harder to get in because differences cause problems. People always like to have people around them that are on the same wavelength as they are. And obviously, if you come from radically different backgrounds, you're not on the same wavelength. So that must cause problems for if you're working class coming
I've
into
just
that world.
typed in lack of working class actors, and as you quoted, 1 in 10 actors said to come from a working class background. Overwhelming 73% of existing British actors are firmly middle class. That was 26th of July 2023. So let's look at articles going back to 2016, why working class actors are a disappearing breed. And that's when, with the rise of Eddie Redmayne, Tom Hiddleston, Dominic West, Benedict Cumberbatch. Article from the 2022, huge decline of working class people in the arts reflects a fall in wider society. Article from 2021, Michael Sheen is right, there is a class crisis in the arts.
I would say
has been colonized by the posh, November 2021. So all I'm saying here, Graham, is this is kind of nothing new, and
I think it's the fact she's bringing it up is quite significant because she's successful. So for her to bring in the word class, because as you said, it's nothing new, is quite a big deal. And maybe there is some sentiment towards trying to change the situation. And it's not that there's anything wrong with middle class people being in the arts. In fact, if you took them out at any point in history, it'd be a disaster for the arts. And so many things that you and me love, in terms of music or films or plays, are 100% middle class. And if you're a Pink Floyd fan like I am, you can't pretend they have any working class roots whatsoever. And it makes no difference. Great art is great art. But the reason it's important is because, can you imagine the 1960s if there hadn't been any working class people involved with the arts? If all the pop groups had in fact been middle class, if all the actors and photographers who became famous had been middle class, it was the working class element that gave the 60s its pep and its drive and its cutting edge.
So in 2021, Quora asks, why are posh actors criticized for their privilege and working class actors are thought of as heroes?
Right? I don't think they are. I don't think they're thought of as heroes in general anymore.
I think it was any question that was being asked, so I've got your response, which is.
But no, I'm not saying there's anything wrong with the arts being, dominated by middle classes. It's just it's about the extent to which they're dominated by middle classes. I mean, think about British movies in the 80s and 90s, the good ones, that is, the interesting ones. If you didn't have Tim Roth or Gary Oldman in their respective backgrounds, I mean, how could Gary Oldman be the actor he is if he'd been brought up in wealth? A lot of the greatness of Gary Oldman comes from his working class background. And so if you take out the working class from the arts, you get one picture of the world. And even when the people making the art, the films, the books, the plays, the music, even when they try to reach out to the rest of the world, they're reaching out to the rest of the world from a point of view that's been formed, not in the world they're talking about. You need to have some authenticity involved. I mean, I'm not sure that people would like it if all costume period dramas were made with entire working class casts by working class crew, because they wouldn't know what they're talking about. So you need to like have a broad cross section of people involved with these things to make the things good, or at least believable.
2019, from the stage, working class actors no more disadvantaged today than they were 40 years ago. So it's an ongoing scenario. And I suppose the question to ask is this ever going to change? I mean, plenty of films actually are about working class subjects, but most films probably have an integration of different classes and how they interact. And is there a suggestion?
I think most British films are thoroughly middle class.
Culture is being represented on the screen, and that wouldn't surely be the case.
I think most British films are thoroughly middle class.
What are soap operas, Graham? What do soap operas present? What world are they presenting?
That's just one part of TV.
But it's massively watched part. It's a massively watched part of TV.
Yeah. I'm not criticizing the whole British cultural scene. I think British culture, popular culture, is the most vibrant, diverse, and rich on the planet, and with the high standards. So I'm not knocking the overall. I'm talking about part of the cultural scene. I'm not dismissing all current British arts based on lack of working class input. I'm just saying it does matter that there isn't enough working class input, So, for example,
Mhm.
actually, no, I'm going to stop there. I know when I'm beaten.
No, I'm not. I'm in no way am I questioning the fact that these. I absolutely believe these statistics are true. The question remains how one changes this in a way that is not in some way false. I think one senses when performance is being contrived for to address certain things, and I believe the best art is always good art will always emerge from whatever the circumstances are. I don't believe great art has has ever been completely held back. If someone's got talent, it will emerge. I
Yeah, but
genuinely
part of
believe
the
that. I
problem,
believe
part of the
that's true. I
problem now
believe
is
that's
that
true amongst artists. I
as
believe that's
yeah,
amongst theatre makers. I believe that in music. I believe that it may require extra determination. It might require some lucky breaks. But overall, I believe that great art will always come out. It will find a way.
not all great art will come out.
Okay,
Only
give me an
the very,
example, Graham.
very,
Give me an example.
only
Give
the
me an
very
example.
well. Put it this way: until the government of Britain changed its rules on funding higher education, and until British society and the economy changed in the last 40 years to be a much harsher, more money-based world with a
Mm,
much weaker welfare state, it was much easier for a working class person to go into performing arts and to go to drama school
yeah.
because they'd get grants, they get they
Yeah.
had their fees paid for them. So already you've got fewer working class people get involved because the money side puts them off. One thing in America, in the West after the war,
Mm,
Civil War, the
mm,
Americans were very keen on rebuilding the West as being a democratic, good place to be, and as opposed to the Russians and terrible communism. So the Americans, for a time, spent a lot of money on classical music because that was regarded as like an important part of Western civilization. And the British with the BBC always supported classical music. But the
yeah.
Americans from about the mid 50s onwards got fed up spending money on culture because you know what America's like, money's even more important in America than it is in Britain. So they
Mm,
pulled the plug on supporting classical music on the radio. And as a
mm,
result, its classical music scene became more minority based, less mainstream, less accessible to the public, and less strong than in Britain. Uh, so I think the class thing goes back to the financial thing. It's all linked together.
yeah.
If you have
I
to support
make
the arts,
Yeah, I mean that I can understand that counter argument. You could say that I'm naive in my belief that great art will always somehow find a way through, and your point is actually that sometimes that opportunity is so stymied that it can't happen, that it's strangulated before it actually gets the chance to breathe, and I guess that then leads to this statistic of how the world of performing is dominated by the middle class, and that probably is a direct result of what your
when
hypothesis
yeah,
is,
I
as
think
opposed to mine somehow naively believing
mm,
that great art will always find a way through.
yeah, the working class films that are made in Britain, which are usually lower budget than the some of the
Mm,
other films, you can tell they're made by middle class people because there's a sort of like earnestness and it just doesn't feel real. The angle they
mm,
take on working class life doesn't feel authentic to being working class or to any
no,
working class aspirations. It's like someone looking into a goldfish bowl at the little fish going round and
mm.
feeling sorry for them and then making a film on it.
Yeah. Are you saying Ken Loach?
No, not Ken Loach. I mean, my only beef with Ken Loach, which how can you have a beef with a guy who's so important and he's also so old? My only beef with him is that he inserts his political viewpoints front and
Yeah.
center
Yeah.
too much sometimes. So I
Mm.
always like Ken Loach films where the politics is a bit lower key.
What? Who's more authentic then, Shane Meadows or Ken Loach?
You've been listening to the podcast Two Big Egos in a Small Car. Your hosts were Graham Chalmers and Charles Hutchinson. This was a Baltic sub production.